I'd like to tell you about my cousin-in-law. We'll call him Chetan Bhai. I married into a Gujarati family, and my cousin's name is Chetan, and he's a bit older than me, so Chetan Bhai. He retired a couple of years ago, having spent his whole career from graduate to senior engineering manager at Larsen & Toubro. It was a job for life. He greatly enjoyed his work. It was a place where there was much order and routine and where he had great friends. Work was a place in Powai where he went for almost 40 years. Today I'm going to talk about the way the world of work is changing. I've spent 25 years studying workplaces, how they're organised and how employers engage employees. Nearly half of that time has been in India. Among other things, I'm a founding member of the Centre for the Transformation of Work, and we're thinking about how changing work dynamics can transform the lives of 1 billion people by 2025. I'm excited and optimistic about the future of work, and specifically the opportunities it presents for young Indians. I see a generation of millennial change makers who are disrupting many institutions: the family, marriage, brands, and of course, the workplace. The millennial cohort came of age in the early 21st century. In India, their life experiences have been very different from those of their parents and grandparents. The earlier generations, growing up in the decades after independence, saw their lives blighted by scarcity and lack of opportunity. There weren't enough jobs to go round, resources were in short supply. To get a telephone in the 1980s, Indians had to put their names down on a waiting list, and it took several years before a line was installed. Their gratification was deferred. And of course, when they tell this story, they highlight the sacrifices they made and how lucky young people are today. A young Indian can walk into Chroma and walk out with the latest smartphone, or at least in a pandemic have it delivered by Amazon tomorrow, because in 2021, a phone is deemed an essential. Expectations have risen. Millennials want instant gratification, we're told. Apna time aayega, our time will come, is replaced by Apna time abhi, our time is now. Few Indians entering the workforce now expect to spend 40 years working for the same employer. Indian millennials were born into an era of opportunity and abundance. They've known rapid economic growth, and their life chances and work opportunities are very different to those of their forefathers. I coined the term midnight's grandchildren to describe the 440 million Indian millennials born at the time of India's economic opening up at the end of the 20th century. They are now a key consumer group, and they make up roughly half the workforce in India. And that's causing tension because the way workplaces are governed hasn't really changed very much in the past couple of hundred years. Traditional places of work are hierarchical and rule-bound, and they're not really geared to meet the hopes of young people who are aspirational and want quick progress. The nature of business may have changed. For many of us, our jobs are more service-oriented and more digital, and for those that make things, there's increased automation. But despite this, businesses continue to be organised along industrial era lines. And it's hardly surprising then that a generation of digital natives seeks a new and different experience of work. As a brief aside, employment is still broadly based on an 8-hour working day, or in India, a 9.5-hour day and work on Saturday. The 8-hour day was introduced in 1914 by the Ford Motor Company, and it's proved highly resilient. Still today, large numbers of people commute to places of work, to offices, to factories, to warehouses, industrial parks, retail outlets. They clock in, their time is monitored, their tasks are measured, they have a lot of meetings to attend and reports to write and emails to respond to, and then they clock out and leave. And work in this sense remains a place you go. Even in the past year, as lockdowns have forced hundreds of millions of us to work from home, the basic routine hasn't changed very much. For many, it's a case of zoom in, zone out, and log off 8, 9, or 10 hours later. It's hardly an appealing proposition, and that's one of the reasons that work is set to be disrupted, because work as we know it doesn't really work. The old model of work, as a place you go, is being replaced, sporadically and unevenly, but it's giving way to the notion of work as a thing you do. That change has the potential to affect all workers to some degree. Increasingly, more and more jobs, particularly what we call white-collar managerial jobs, the kind that young graduates aspire to, can be done from anywhere. Replacing work as a noun, a place, with work as a verb, a thing you do, creates all kinds of new and exciting opportunities. It means that you're not restricted to working in a place to which you can commute. It means you don't have to think only about one job, but that you could apply your skills in a number of roles simultaneously. You can work across regions, time zones, and industries, finding ways to satisfy your passions as well as putting bread on the table. There are many forces driving this change from both sides of the equation, both in terms of how workers think about work and engage with organisations, and how businesses find the skills they need. Both are in flux. They're becoming less closed and formal and more open and informal. This is not something that just arrived with the pandemic and the fact that everyone has had to work from home. COVID-19 has poured gasoline on a fire that was already alight. Technology, of course, plays a part. Digital technologies means that we're connected anywhere and everywhere. There are economic factors. Asia's well-educated and highly literate populations see access to work opportunities in global supply chains that were unthought of a generation ago. And at the intersection of technology and economics, we see innovation and new business models. A host of platform businesses or job marketplaces now make it easy for workers and businesses to find each other. There are many terms used to describe this ecosystem of gig workers. They're all part of what I call the open talent economy. You've all heard of Top Coder. There's a bunch of others specialising in niche markets. There's even one called Odd Engineer, where you can find, you guessed it, odd engineers. There's an important cultural and generational aspect to this change, and I think particularly so in India. A lot of young people don't want the job for life and the deferred gratification that comes from the slow climb up the corporate ladder. They want to progress quickly, and they're happy to move jobs to do so. They acquire new skills across different domains. And the skills in demand now won't be the same ones that are required for high-paid jobs in 5 or 10 years' time. Some of the jobs that are well established now didn't exist when I began my working life. There were no social media managers, no search engine specialists. No one was advertising for data analysts or front-end developers. All of those jobs can be done really from anywhere as long as you have an internet connection. For many people coming into the workforce, and to be honest, for lots of us in the later stages of our working lives, the rigid workplace hierarchies that were established in the 19th or 20th century hold little appeal. India's vibrant startup culture is one symptom of this. Many young people see the opportunity to start a business or to join a company in its early stage and be part of shaping it as preferential to joining an old economy enterprise that's all rules and regulations. Startups with their young workforces, relaxed policies and socially minded cultures hold great promise. And as capital has flowed into the country and newly minted wealth has been reinvested, so entrepreneurship has become sexy and socially acceptable in a way that it wasn't even a decade ago. Even in the arcane world of arranged marriages, being an entrepreneur now has a cachet, whereas in the past it would have been a no-no on your biodata. Attitudes to work are changing. Few organisations, particularly incumbent ones, have yet understood the changes needed to accommodate that new worker mindset. But those businesses that do will be the winners. They'll have the pick of the talent They'll be agile and responsive and inventive because they tap into a much wider pool of knowledge, skills, and innovation. The US Space Agency, NASA, has long reached outside its four walls and found talented people to solve big problems. If you think of NASA as a traditional place of work, it's home to about 17,000 employees. But it's also an organisation with access via freelancers through platforms to a crowd of more than 1 million potential problem solvers. More and more companies, large and small, see the benefits that accrue when they rethink work. Let's consider then the benefits to people, companies and societies that this new world of work offers and why young Indians are in pole position to take advantage. Open talent economies give people more control over when they work, how they work, what type of work they do and on what terms. They let us balance our human need for regular income and stability with the flexibility to explore other options. They let us combine short-term gains with longer-term growth. Work as a thing you do, not as a place you go, creates employment for people who may have been excluded from work by their gender, their location, by disability, or other factors. In the past, businesses set up in places where there were pools of talent and people flocked to the sites where the jobs were. When companies let go of the feeling that they need people in one place, they find that they can spread their nets much farther afield. They can explore vast new constituencies of workers who may have been discriminated against, who may not live close by, who may come from very different backgrounds and have alternative skill sets. Access to a worldwide talent community is a great diversity strategy. Society benefits too when more people have access to work opportunities. Tax revenues go up, wealth is redistributed. When people don't need to move to where the work is and can stay in their local communities and do their work from there, then those locations see economic benefits. Less commuting means less traffic and less pollution. Quality of life improves. Let's finally then come back to India and its youthful and ambitious population. Midnight's grandchildren are skilled at balancing tradition and modernity, old and new. They're comfortable with ambiguity and contradiction, and they're good at building hybrid models. And that's one of the reasons I think that this moment is such a great opportunity. Indian millennials have grown up in environments where hierarchies rule their families and their schools and the universities they go to. They've been in education systems that are designed to train workers for old economy companies. And often they're respectful of that old order, sometimes cautious, not wanting to be outsiders, but at the same time seeking faster returns, quicker promotion and more growth. They're highly adept at balancing deference and ambition. Now's a great time for that adaptability to shine. We're on the cusp of a work revolution. We're not there yet, but the direction of travel is clear. Companies need to let go of centuries of old established thinking, and that culture change is hard. Young people entering their earning and tax-paying years must take responsibility for their own careers and see themselves as the heroes of those stories, rather than relying on an institution to take care of them. They'll find new ways of earning and build careers very different from the job for life that my cousin Chetanbhai enjoyed. In doing so, they can turn a moment into a movement. Thank you.